Jesus, I am so excited today. It's like I woke up and thought today is the day to get working for Jesus.
Kat, I'm so excited to find someone who's ready to take action and get things done.
Oh man, I am that girl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I've got something perfect for you, so let's get started. What are you doing? Stand up. Remember, we were gonna take action.
Yeah, but this is where I always sit.
Right, but I need more than this.
Oh, I know what you're getting at. Okay, Jesus, how much do you want?
What?
$50? Is that enough?
Oh, that's not what I meant.
Oh, all right. Well, 100 then, you know. I mean, you drive a hard bargain. Okay, but you might not want to cash this till next Friday. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There you go.
Okay, Kat, really, I do think it's great that you want to give, but I want you to mentor a younger woman.
Ooh, yeah, right. Well, Jesus, you know, I'm not really into, like, teaching people and stuff. I mean, I don't really get into that.
Okay, okay, you know that woman at the office, Amy?
Yeah.
I want you to take her out to lunch. Tell her about me.
Well, Amy is different. I mean, like, really different, you know?
I know, but she needs to know about me.
And I can tell the people at the church to call her. I mean, they get paid to do things like that.
I want you to do that.
Jesus, I just don't feel comfortable doing that.
What are you doing? I am waiting for my coffee. Fighting off a panic.
No, Kat, the problem is
Something to lighten the stress.
you're too
A
comfortable.
little light reading. Some lovely calendar choices. Would rather glue.
Yes, I'm excited. Ugh. Prepared for the feast. So, I've got to tell you, I really like this time of the year. And the reason I like this time of the year is not just because it's the fall and I like the change coming from the heat of summer and the colors and everything else, but it's all the preparing that we get to do. Like Thanksgiving, right? I mean, you got to prepare all the food that you cook and you eventually eat at Thanksgiving, right? Right? I mean, well, yeah, I mean, it's the only reason why I like Thanksgiving. And then there's, of course, Christmas is another one of those seasons where you're preparing, you got to prepare the presents, you got to prepare the space, especially for family that's coming in. You got to clean the places that you don't usually clean. You've got to get everything prepared for them. And the seasons themselves are reminders that time kind of marches on and requires that we pay attention. Pay attention enough to even get out our winter clothes because we need to make sure that we still own them and that they still smell okay and all the rest of it, right? But then when we think about other things, like say the Olympics, I mean, people have to prepare for that. And whether you're an athlete or someone going to watch it, everyone has to prepare in order to make the journey, in order to be there, in order to participate. The same thing is true, of course, of the Boston Marathon, right? First of all, I don't know anyone in their right mind who would run a marathon, but that aside, I mean, you've got to prepare for that. And think about what they have to do mentally to prepare, knowing that in 2013 there was a bombing at that point. But we too, as a congregation, we have to prepare. I mean, we've got to get everything ready. We have to set everything up. We've got to print everything and make sure everything's in order and even spelled correctly. We've got to be ready to even worship together, and that's a good thing. It is. Preparation is a really good thing, but not all preparation is good, right? I mean, Timothy McVeigh, Dylan Roof, Emmanuel Sampson, Stephen Paddock, and Devin Kelly, among so many others. They all have the dubious distinction of having prepared, and in some cases, extensively, for the massacres that they visited upon their victims in places generally regarded as safe. And ironically, their preparation begs the question of our own. Are we ready? Have we thought about it? And look, While these human-made tragedies and natural disasters especially beg the question of why God would even allow such a thing, which, by the way, is a really great question to ask. God invites it. And we should ask that question. We should also remember that we expect God to be faithful. I mean, that's why we ask the question in the first place. We think God can do something about it. That's why we get twisted up about it. That's why we get mad when these things happen. That's why we feel that sadness. God, what are you doing? But at the same time, God expects us to be faithful also. I mean, God isn't the only one who's expected to do things in this relationship. We have a job too. I mean, think of it this way. Can you imagine a marriage where one of the spouses, was only responsible for being faithful, but the other one didn't have to? Is that okay? Okay, the answer is no. For those of you who are wondering, the answer is no. But it's not just interpersonal relationships. I mean, even our relationships with corporations, right? We expected Enron to do right with our life savings, and they didn't. We expected Equifax to do right with our information, and they didn't. Years ago when we were living in Florida, I remember, and this was the time when cell phones, they would still charge for roaming, right? Whenever you called outside of your calling area, they would charge you extra for that. And I was looking at my bill, and I called them one day, and I said, hey, so I've got some questions about my bill. And the person on the other end said, well, yes, Mr. Ely, I see that you've got some roaming charges, and just to be clear, those come when you call outside your calling area. I said, yes, but look at where I live, Ocala, Florida, right? And look at where it says the calls originated. Ocala, Florida. How can I be calling outside my origination area? They understood. They fixed it. But why did I have to fuss at them for that? Why is it that they expect me to be wholly faithful with paying my bills and my invoices, but I can't expect them to do right by me unless I fuss at them? It's an uneven relationship. Certainly not equal. And look, our relationship with God is unequal as well. But in that relationship, again, God has expectations of us. And this is one of the reasons why I think Jesus tells this parable in Matthew chapter 25. This is verses 1 through 13. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 young bridesmaids who took their lamps and went out to meet the groom. Now, 5 of them were wise, and the other 5 were foolish. The foolish ones took their lamps but didn't bring oil for them. But the wise ones took their lamps and also brought containers of oil. Now, when the groom was late in coming, they all became drowsy and they went to sleep. But at midnight, there was a cry, "Look, the groom, come out to meet him." Then all those bridesmaids got up and prepared their lamps. But the foolish bridesmaids said to the wise ones, "Give us some of your oil because our lamps have gone out." But the wise bridesmaids replied, "No, because if we share with you, there won't be enough for our lamps and yours. We have a better idea. You go to those who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were gone to buy oil, the groom came. Those who were ready went with him into the wedding. Then the door was shut. Later, the other bridesmaids came and said, "Lord, Lord, open the door for us." But he replied, "I tell you the truth, I don't know you. Therefore, keep watch. Keep alert, because you don't know the day or the hour." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So, what do you think about this parable? Do you like it? Yes? Yeah? What do you like about it?
Be prepared. Speak.
Yeah, right? But I mean, what about the bridesmaids who wouldn't share their oil?
Buy a tenfold.
I mean, doesn't that go against the grain of what Jesus teaches?
I don't think that's the point of the story.
I mean, oh, really? You mean you think the story's answering a different question? Because, let's face it, the Good Samaritan story, right, is answering the question, who is my neighbor? Right? That's explicit. But this parable is answering, as I said, as has been said, a different question. In fact, there are a lot of scholars who have trouble with this passage because they think it's dissonant with what Jesus teaches. But here, Jesus is asking the question, when to expect the coming of the Messiah, and what should we do? Now, as we think about this question, we invariably have to talk about the fact that what we're really getting into is what we generally regard as the second coming. Okay? And there are a lot of ways to think about this, and there are scriptural foundations for each of these ideas. I mean, you could think of it as the heavens opening and the music playing and the warmth of God's light shining upon the earth and greeting us with all of the power and redemption of the Lord. Isn't that great? Yes. But then there's these other passages that talk about Jesus at the head of the army of angels with a sword ready to take names and to wreak havoc on those who wreaked havoc on God's people. But then you've got this other idea of Jesus, coming down and just being really comfortable with our way of doing things. And I wasn't really into this one, but then you have this other way of thinking about the second coming, and that's what's commonly referred to as the rapture. The idea that we will all be taken up by God. And there's the pre-tribulation rapture people who think we're going to be taken up before things get really, really bad, and those who think that we get taken up after things get really, really bad. But here's my problem with any of those theories of the second coming. None of them talk about how we're supposed to prepare for what's coming in the first place. And that's what Jesus seems to be concerned with. Mark Davis said this, when all is said and done, when we have scared ourselves silly with the now or never urgency of faith and the once and always finality of judgment, we need to take a deep breath and let it out with a laugh, because what we're really watching for is a party. We're looking for a party. The bridesmaids, when they fell asleep on the job, they woke up. They weren't expecting judgment. They weren't expecting punishment or any of that. They were looking to join the wedding party. God has good things in store for us. God wants good things for us. This is who we serve. But here's the thing. It can be tempting to read this parable and then think, well, okay, everyone for themselves. I mean, the 5 bridesmaids, they were prepared, the others were not, and they needed to take care of themselves. The other ones, it's just too bad because they should have had their stuff together, right? But that's not what this parable is saying either. What's important to God is what we do when we think no one is looking, when we forget that God is always watching. It's funny to me, the number of people who will say, don't cuss in church, but then they'll leave the parking lot, and as soon as they enter the traffic on 119, immediately unload all these cuss words at the people that they're driving me. I'm sorry, but that's church too. It ain't just in here. You really think God's isolated to these walls? Everywhere we go, we should be paying attention to how we behave, to what we do. And look, we should be helping people in the midst of these tragedies, of course. But it's what we do when there isn't a tragedy that sets us apart, that defines our faith, that shows that we're ready for the future that Christ has prepared for us. And this is not to say that our past is not important. Of course it is. But it should be informing our assessment of the present and how we frame the future. God doesn't expect us to have the whole picture of what God is doing, because we don't. God doesn't need us to know everything, also because we don't. God does expect us to know enough. God expects us to act on what we do know. And what we know is all that God seeks to redeem and transform is yet to come. And so we don't have to live in fear. We don't have to live with confusion. We can live and act in joy, in real joy. Because the future is God's, and all that we need to be ready for it has been given in Jesus Christ. And so, how are we to be ready? And it's not a question of when, it's not even for what, but the question is how. And we already know the answer to where, it's everywhere. We already know the answer to who, it's Jesus Christ. And why is the love of God. And so how is everything that we do to demonstrate that God's Spirit, God's sacrifice matters to us. It doesn't do any good to say that God has changed my life if it doesn't actually change my life. If I don't actually change my steps. It's no good for me to call Christ Lord if I'm unwilling to take His direction. And at the end of the day, it's not about whether or not we know when the second coming is going to happen, because of course we don't know. It's about being ready. So ask yourself that question. Are you ready? In the name of the one who prepares us. I hope so.
Remember, all 10 of the bridesmaids were asleep when the news of the groom arrived. God doesn't expect us to lose sleep over the kingdom, but God does expect us to be ready for it. So love your neighbor and make your preparations. Get up, take heart. Jesus is calling you.